Hey everybody, Scoutcrafter here again, midweek Wednesday. Today, the anniversary of September 11th. Boy, what a day that was. I remember it well, only living a couple miles from ground zero. We got a few things to get to today. I just so much stuff. I'm so happy to be down the shop, so ready for today's episode. First thing I want to do is start off real quick with our last episode. Last episode, I talked real quickly about my poor man's flea market where I walk around at night and see what people are throwing out. And I showed this little snippet of film here. And that was right up the block from me. And what that was, I mistakenly thought it was an engine hoist. But in turn, what it is a Hoyer lift or a medical lift. Now, you pointed that out right away. Mike was the first who pointed out, but you pointed it out right away and you said, yeah, that's a medical lift, not an engine hoist. But the funny thing is, I'm looking at that, and thank you for letting me know that. But that sparked a whole new thing, because when you're retired, you have all kinds of free, stupid time to do stuff that, look at the rabbit hole that this took me down. So when you said that, and I said, yeah, you're right, it is a medical lift, because I did notice it was much cleaner and it had nicer wheels on it. However, I said, that's almost identical to an engine hoist. They look identical. So I said, who is this guy Hoyer? Turns out the man was named Ted Hoyer, who was at 16 years old, became a paraplegic, where he lost the use of his arms and legs, and him and his cousin or something, they invented this Hoyer lift, okay? Which, to me, made me think, okay, not to take anything away from Ted, but it looks like that was already invented, but he just, made it a little bit lighter duty so he could use it indoors, right? The only difference between a Hoyer lift and a engine hoist is the capacity. Probably the thickness of the tubing, the weight of the actual crane. But engine cranes have been made for, this is, Ted Hoyer did this in the 40s. Engine cranes have been around since the beginning of automobiles, and they were real popular in the 20s and 30s. So I said, is that really an invention, or is that kind of a little bit of a ripoff? You know what I mean? And so then when I started thinking about ripoffs, I'm saying, there's a lot of items that we use in every day and whatnot and come across that are actually ripoffs of the original. Or sometimes you could have an original that's 95% good, but somebody tweaks it, a little bit, and his invention takes off. But it was under your idea. You know what I mean? And it's this way with foods and all kinds of things. Like, I'll give an example, again, with the ripoffs. Oreo cookies. We're all familiar with the Oreo cookie, okay? And when everybody thinks of Oreo, but the original Oreo cookie, or the cookie that was original, was the Hydrox. Hydrox came out long before Oreo. Oreo was a real ripoff of that cookie. And the funny thing is, when I was a kid, I preferred Hydrox. Now, Hydrox has a little bit of a different taste. It's not quite as sweet. It has less, it's not as much filling, and the filling is a little bit different, but it was more natural ingredients. They didn't use hydrogenated oils, and they didn't use high fructose corn syrup. They used real cane sugar. So it had a more homemade taste, and I don't do well with chemicals. I can't process foods, especially now that I'm older. I can't take processed foods. Remember when we were kids, we used to go to like, even fast foods, McDonald's. I can't eat that stuff now. It doesn't appeal to me at all. But when I was a kid, I loved it, That was my, I loved that stuff. We all did when we were kids. But chemicals, even I would much rather, and you old guys are laughing now because it's the truth, or we'd much rather have a bakery, something that goes stale. If it don't go stale in a day, I don't want it. I don't want something that has a shelf life of 5 years, okay? So anyway, I said, you know what? I'm going to talk about Hydrox on the show. So I said, let me order some, see if they're still around. Where can I get them? Because I haven't seen them in the stores in years. Turns out they kind of went out of business, but then they came back. They're owned by Leaf Company, so you could get them on Amazon. So I said, okay. Amazon's out, they don't have them. So I called up Leaf Company. I said, oh man, did they stop making these just when I'm going to talk about them? I call them up. Don't you know I get to speak to a real guy, like, like one of the owners of the company. And I tell him, I said, look, I got a YouTube channel and I was just talking about this. I just want to know, do you still make them? And the guy goes, yeah, you know what? Our machine just went down a couple weeks ago and we can't get parts and we're trying to... And it's like talking to a baker around the corner. These guys make these things in small batches and they always sell out. So he says, yeah, hopefully we'll be up in a couple weeks and we'll have them back in stock. So you can check out Amazon or your local supermarket. But the local supermarket, now, if you know anything, I used to work in a supermarket. Supermarkets are like the mafia. There were brands in there. Like if you're in Nabisco's got big pull. And they literally grease the manager's palm, if you know what I mean. So what happens is, if you're like an up-and-coming brand, you're going to be in the back on the bottom shelf. You're not going to have any, whereas if you're like Nabisco, you're going to be topping, and right front eye level. There's a whole bunch of things that go on in the supermarket you'd be surprised with. But that's why you don't see a lot of smaller brands and whatnot. So anyway, I just thought that was really interesting. I'll let you know when the Hydrox are back in. Anybody else ever try those? Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't know. Maybe some people are just set in their ways. But Oreo's got a lot of chemicals and stuff like that. This was a real natural cookie, And anyway, we got a lot to get to today. Let's see what we got going on. Okay, to start off with, I got some great light bulbs. I'm a big fan of light bulbs. We have our light bulb tester here. And we have a couple LED light bulbs, things like that I picked up I want to talk about. First of all, you remember these type of bulbs? These were spotlights. Everybody had them years ago in their backyards or hanging off the side of the house, right? And they used a lot of electricity. Usually they're like, 80, 100 watts or something like that. These are the new LED ones. I picked these up cheap at a hardware store that always has good sales up there. And you can see the difference here, down here. There's a BR40, which is a flood, which it opens up, because these have a lens on them. And you can have a PAR 38, which these are, which has more, it's only a 40 degrees arc of light, where the other one is 110. I'll show you what that means in a minute. Okay, now if anybody's ever used one of these light bulbs and one of those outdoor lights, the old ones, these were like a heavy glass. And I always liked them because they felt like substantial. This here is, I think it's a polycarbonate. It doesn't feel like a glass, but it's weatherproof, it's weather rated. And this only uses 11 watts. But let me show you, because of the fluting, you can see the lens. It's not just a piece of plastic. There's actual, like lenses in there. Let me show you what it looks like when you you won't be able to see the brightness now because of, the auto darkening of the camera. But here it is. That is extremely, you can see my hand. It's extremely bright, no heat, so to speak. And it's just a beautiful bulb. I can't wait to put these out in the backyard. But you can see it's so nice. That's only 11 watts. So you could run these things all night and not have to worry about the cost. Let me show you some really other interesting bulbs. Okay, for those that live in the States, here in the States, we have a store called Dollar Tree. It's a store that everything used to be $1, but now it's $1.25 due to inflation. But they have a lot of different interesting items in there, and I've always gotten a lot of light bulbs from there. A lot of them are rated by Underwriters Laboratory or UL rated, which is amazing for $1.25 an LED bulb. It just blows my mind. But they had some different ones there that I've never seen before. This one here, do you see this? It uses just over a half a watt. Okay, LEDs. Now, what's interesting about this bulb here, it's a decorative bulb, and you can see it's got some, I think this is, again, I think that's a yeah, there's a seam in there, so that's a plastic housing. But let me show you what this looks like here. This one here, it's pretty interesting because what it does is it has, let me turn on, it's like I said, a decorative bulb, and you can see how that, let me zoom it in there. You can see how that works, okay? It just, and it throws off quite a bit of light in a darker room, but if you were having a kid's room or something like that and you wanted a light that had some movement to it, so to speak, you throw that in. Very interesting. Again, $1.25. I can't believe they can make it. This one here is a multicolor. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, here's the multicolor. Now, I don't know how much of this is going to show up because of the camera, but this one here is lots of very vibrant, bright lights. It goes through a pattern of changing lights and going through. It's a red, a blue, a green, and they're beautiful colors. But like I said, I don't know if you could see it too much because of all the lighting I have going on down here. I just shut off too. Very interesting, very nice. If again, you put this in a lamp or something, it's always going to have some kind of movement. And again, it only uses 0.6 of a watt, 0.6 of a watt, which is nothing. I mean, no temperature, it doesn't get warm. That's pretty nice. That was really nice. But let me show you the last. Now, this one here I thought was really interesting. Again, at the Dollar Tree, $1.25. This is a color changing bulb. It uses 5 watts, okay, which is still not a lot of wattage. But it goes through 17 colors. And the cool part about this is you could stop it at any color you want because it has a memory. I'm going to show you how that works. But here's some of the specifications on here. And this is really interesting, okay? Okay, let's turn this on here. And I'll show you the first thing you're going to see is, and again, the colors are going to be screwed up through the phone. They're not exact, but these are really bright, nice colors, vibrant, and I know it's doing a little something to the camera with, you know, because of the LEDs, the way it works. But now let's say you had a color that you wanted to keep, and these are all vibrant blues and greens and yellows. But let's say you wanted to keep a color. What you do is you quick turn it off and on. You're supposed to do it with the switch, okay? Or you could do it by spinning the light bulb. But now you see we locked into that color. If you want to go to the next color, you just switch it on and off real quick until you get the color that you like. Okay, so let's say we like that green, and we're going to leave it with that green. But isn't that interesting? For $1.25, it amazes me the technology that's in this bulb, that they could do that for $1.25, make it in China, ship it here. It's just amazing to me. And again, we can go through all the colors. There are 17 different colors, and they're all beautiful, but they don't show up, unfortunately, on the camera. Or you can have this as a regular light bulb, like if you just wanted a white light bulb. So isn't that something? Dollar Tree, $1.25. Okay, next up, I just want to talk real quick because a lot of people have been asking about the wire brushes that I use. That's one of the most used items that I use in the shop, is the wire wheel on the motor. You can use any kind of motor that you have, whether it be 3,600 RPM or 1,725, what we consider slow speed. I prefer the slow speed, but you can put it on the 3,200, the higher speed. These are 2 different types of wire wheels. This one here I got at Harbor Freight. Comes under the Warrior brand. It's their 5-inch wire wheel. This is a very stiff, hard wire brush. This is great for really hard, rusty, cast iron projects, things like that. They wear a long time, but they're too hard for most of the tools that we're going to restore. This one here, I just got this off of Amazon, but it's the same one I was always getting at Harbor Freight, I believe. This one here is a thinner one. You could see the profile. It's a little bit thinner than this one here, and the bristles are much softer, okay? And don't be fooled, even though this is brass colored, it is indeed steel. So there's brass colored steel. These wear okay. After a while, they start to lose their little wires will come out as it's spinning. Again, this one's good to 6,000 RPM, and I keep mine at 1725, but this one does a much better job. I'm going to show you a demonstration of a hard wire wheel next to a soft wire. Now, if you don't have a buffer or grinder or something, just an old washing machine motor, any kind of old motor will work fine, and you get what's called an arbor adapter, and it looks like this, okay? It's got usually 2 screws. Try and get the ones that have the hex screws or the hex socket. The ones with the slotted screws aren't as good, but you can see you buy this here like this. They sell them everywhere, and you get this for the shaft size, most a 1/2 inch. And you take this off here like this. Okay, there's 2 washers that'll open up, and you place your wire brush. There's no right or wrong way, but there will be a bushing in there. Now, if you have a larger shaft, you might have to pop that bushing out. That's why it's just a spacer bushing. It really doesn't do much. And then these washers will fit inside of these recesses, as you can see. Tighten it up, put on the shaft, and Bob's your uncle. Now I have a piece of aluminum here. I marked the center line. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run the right side on the hard or stiff wire brush, and I'm going to use the left side on the softer wire brush, and I'm going to show you what galling is and why you have to be very careful. On the right side of my motor, I have the hard wire brush, the stiff one. On the left side, I put the softer brush. Okay, now what I want you to notice here, you could just faintly make out the line here in the middle. But you can see on the right side, it has a different finish than the left. The left is rough. The right is a little bit shiny. However, notice all the galling that happened. That's when the steel actually disrupts the surface, and it could mess up a soft material. Usually wire brushes are made for steel, but when they wear down, some wire brushes give a nicer finish. Also the side of the brush, all the things that you can use. But you have to be very careful when you put a new wire brush on, because you will, this is the new one, you'll get that scratchiness. You see that? Because it's brand new. As that brush wears in, it'll become nice and smooth like this one. So, but you always have to be careful and think about that. But try and go with a softer wire brush for some materials that won't scratch up your material, your tools. Okay, so in closing, a lot of yapping today. I guess I should wait a little while after my coffee before I start my videos. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you again on Friday. Take care now. Bye-bye.